Hi Wildcats. This is an overview of Unit 0, Focus Question 1, where we're looking at common physics concepts and quantities. Specifically in this video, I wanted to talk about how we in science make sure that the results that we're making are comparable. So let's just jump right in. Uh, where in the world do you live? Well, we live in the United States, and because we live in the United States, we are mainly an imperial country. Imperial means our system of measurement is things like feet, gallons, right? But not everything. So you buy your milk and gas by the gallon, but your pop by the liter, which is a metric unit. So, uh, but we are mainly imperial. And that serves you fine if you live in the United States and only ever talk to people in the United States or Liberia or Myanmar. But if you live anywhere else in the world, you are going to largely be using the metric system as your system of measurement. And so in science, science is a global effort, and we need to make sure that we're all using the same system of measurement. And that is the metric system, as I said. So let's talk a little bit about what that is. The metric system is a system of base 10. What do I mean by base 10? So base 10 means that the standard unit is 1, and then everything from there is scaled up or down by a factor of 10. So if we have, for example, our unit is 1, and we just, to get to the next step, or deca, we just take that and we multiply it by 10. Okay. To get to 100, I just multiply that by 10. So 1 times 10 times 10 is 100. If to get to 1,000, I just do 1 times 10 times 10 times 10, and that I get to 1,000 or kilo. The opposite is true. If I take 1 and divide it, or take 1/10 of it, so divide it by 10, I'm now at 0.1 or deci. If I take another, divide it by 10 again, so 1 divided by 10 divided by 10, I'm at 0.01 or hundredths or centi. And so it's just this pattern of 10 again and again and again all along the way, which makes it repeatable and easy to understand because you're just multiplying or dividing by 10 every time, unlike our system of measurement where they're imperial, where there really is no relationship, right? Like there's 12 inches in a foot, but there's like 5,000 some odd number of feet in a mile, and it's just whatever random numbers that have existed. So metric is actually an easier system because it's just by 10. Turns out, though, we just don't know it. So that's the basics of it. We need to know that there are different, in metric system, we use different units than we do here. So length is always meters. Oh, this is spelled weird. We in the US spell it METER. Mass is kilogram, time is seconds, and so you can see how we abbreviate those. Meter is M, kilogram is kg, and second is S. We'll talk about some of these other ones, but really you just worry about length, mass, and time. And so these are equivalencies, right? So we need to be able to move back and forth between them. So 1 kilometer is equal to how many meters? Well, if I look on this chart, 1 to get to kilo, I times 10 times 10 times 10. So 1 times 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. So therefore, in 1 kilometer or kilometer, we would say that there are 1,000 meters. We can go the other way, right? How many centigrams in 1 gram? So the base unit here would be gram, right? And in a centigram, how many are there? Well, there are 0.01 grams, because to get to centi, I take 1 divided by 10 divided by 10. So centigrams. But we also need to go the other way too. So let's look at if I want to know how many of the small things are in a big thing. So meters is big, right? So now my base unit here is meter. And it wants to know how many millimeters are in 1 meter. So a common mistake students make is they just memorize this chart and they go, oh, well, milli means thousandths, so therefore there is 0.001 millimeters in a meter. But if you think about a meter stick is 1 whole meter, right? This is 1 meter. And then it's divided up into centimeters, and then even there, smaller millimeters. And so there must be a lot of millimeters in 1 meter. And so it's not 0.001. That's how much. It is true that 1 millimeter is 0.001 of a meter, or 1/1000th of a meter. But if I have a meter, there are 1000 millimeters in it. The smaller things make up a meter. So it's important when you look at this chart and think about these numbers, think about, what are we talking about? Are we talking about getting smaller, or getting bigger, or in other words, how many of these make these up? So there are 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. There are 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. And you'll practice with these, and I think it'll become more intuitive. Okay, so here I've got another kind of setup. Right, we can do this one more time. 1 meter. So now this is meter. We're at our base unit here. Okay, how many centimeters in 1 meter? So here's my meter stick. I actually put a picture here, so you can imagine this going on, and you've all used these before, and you know they go 1, 2, 3, and the numbers go all the way up to 100. So centimeters, right? Let's not look at this and go 0.01. 0.01, a single centimeter. 1 centimeter is 1/100th of a meter, right? These are smaller. And so if the question is in 1 meter, how many centimeters are there? Well, if 1 centimeter is 1/100th, then it must take 100 centimeters to get a meter. Now let's look at this. We don't always have to go back to the base unit. So now it's asking us, what is the relationship between centimeters and meters? And so we look here. Well, these two are right next to each other. All right. Millimeters are smaller than centimeters, so we're going to need more than 1 millimeter to make up a centimeter. How many? Well, okay, this one's, if we remember it's base 10, we know that to go to from one step to the other, going up, we multiply by 10. So therefore there must be 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. And sure enough, if we look at our ruler here, or our meter stick, we would see that if this is 1 centimeter, and I counted the millimeters within it, I would find that there are 10. Okay. And so now we're going back here. 1 millimeter is how many, or 1 meter is how many millimeters? We just did that. So millimeters is here. To get from milli to centi, it's 10. To get from centi to deca, that's another 10. And to get from deca back to our base, that's another 10. So how many millimeters in a meter? 10 times 10 times 10, or 1,000. And that's how you do it. Once you use these frequently, I think you'll just start to have those numbers memorized, but at least initially it's good to understand how we're moving on this chart. Okay, next I want to talk about how we use these, and I want to start by talking about breakfast. So let's say you decide you're going to make, for your family, a 6-egg omelet. Okay? And so you say, hey, brother, sister, parent, dog, get 6 eggs out of the fridge for me. But another way to say that would be, we know that eggs come in a dozen, right? So couldn't you also say, get me a half dozen eggs? I mean, if you told someone, get me a half dozen, in their brain, they're going to go, oh, well, that's 6. Because we know a dozen stands for 12. And so these two things are equal. And so when we do dimensional analysis allows us to move from one unit of measurement to another, just like we move between eggs, number of eggs, and dozen of eggs, right? And so these are equivalencies. So when I set this up, I say 12 eggs is equal to 1 dozen. And we know if things are equal, right? Like if I put, oh gosh, doesn't matter. If I say 8 over 8, everyone in math knows, well, that's just 1. Okay, and I can multiply anything by 1, and I don't change the actual value. So I could write 12 eggs is equal to 1 dozen as an equivalency, or as a fraction. I could say 12 eggs is equal to 1 dozen, and so I can put these over each other, right? I could do it the other way too. I could write, it doesn't matter which order I put them in, right? I could put 1 dozen over 12 eggs. Right? Those are equivalent, so I can set them up. Here, this is a unit conversion between imperial and metric. So 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. So 1 inch over 2.54 centimeters, that equals 1. And if I multiply this by a number, say 7.5 inches, it would convert. My inches would cancel, and I would end up with centimeters. So this is allowing me to move between things. between not only units, but also imperial and metric, which is something we'll sometimes need to do. And we could do the same thing here. So we could set this up, right? If I have 6 eggs, how many dozen is that? Well, 6 eggs, right? I would write this here. I can put anything over 1 and it doesn't change it. Well, I want to know how many dozen it is. So I need to get rid of eggs. So I'm going to put eggs on the bottom, right? I do this without even numbers at first. Eggs on the bottom and dozen on the top. So that way, right, if something's, when I multiply these across, eggs is going to cancel because I have an eggs and eggs, top and bottom. And now the only unit I'm left with is dozen. Sweet, that's going to be my answer. So now I just have to ask myself, what is the relationship? Well, how many eggs are in 1 dozen? Well, 1 dozen, there are 12 eggs. 6 times 1, so this would be 6 dozen divided by 12. Notice I've got no unit on the bottom because my eggs have canceled. So I would say that this is 1/2 or 0.5 dozen, which is something we all know, but this is how you math to it. So we could do this down here too, right? 12 inches is how many centimeters? Well, okay, so I've got 12 inches, put it over 1. Oh, I know sometimes I think in chemistry they might teach you like picket fence where you draw the lines. That's fine too. I just learned it with multiplication signs. We're doing the same thing. Some of you might draw lines like between them like that. That's fine too. Doesn't matter. I'll always do multiplication because old habits die hard. So 12 inches. So now I've got inches on the bottom. Is there some relationship between inches and centimeters? There is. It's right here. Okay, 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. So I put centimeters on the top. My inches are going to cancel. Cool. Now I just need to put in the numbers. Well, 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. So that's it. I'm done. 12, right, what's my unit? The only unit left is centimeters. So 12 times 2.4. I don't have my calculator in front of me, but this is going to be, what, 24, 6, about 30, so somewhere around 30 centimeters. You can get your calculator out and do the exact thing. Okay, so hopefully that helped. We are looking at, in this video, how to make our observations comparable. And we talked about we need to use the metric system. We talked about the base unit for length, time, and mass. We looked at prefixes and what they mean and how we can move between them. And then finally, we did some dimensional analysis of how we can convert from one unit to another, whether that be from metric to metric or from imperial to metric.